I am a Liverpudlian, and I come from the Spion Cup. I love to sing, I love to shout, I get thrown out quite a lot. We support the team that's dressed in red. It's a team that you all know. It's a team that we call Liverpool, and to glory we will go. We've won the league, we've won the cup,
Hello, listeners to the Plastic Scousers Podcast. My name is Matt Simpson, and you may have noticed that this is not quite the usual intro that we have for the podcast, with the one main factor being Owen isn't here. So I should probably explain exactly what's going on. Owen is in fact on the podcast this month. Just a bit later on, what happened was we recorded the podcast a couple of days ago, and for some reason the first maybe 40 minutes of the show didn't record properly, and so we don't have time to re-record it because I'm going away to Abu Dhabi for a week, and Owen's got a lot of work on, and we obviously want to get this out now because it's already about a week later than we used to. So we've got to have a bit of a fix. Basically, what you're now going to hear for the next however long, 20-30 minutes, is me talking to you by myself about what happened over the course of October, with occasional interjections from Owen, because my audio didn't connect, but his did. Meaning I've got essentially just some clips of Owen that I've cut out of the first 40 minutes of the podcast that I will then interject within what I'm talking about now, before we cut back to the audio that I do have later on, which starts about halfway through the Tottenham Hotspur match. Later on in the games, before we then go into the features that we have for the podcast. So I will explain exactly what features we have. We will continue our journey through looking through the Despicable 11. We've got left backs up this time around, so we'll be talking a little bit about that. We've got a spooky Halloween themed game, which I came up with for Owen to play and was very enjoyable. And we also play another round of our favourite game, Liverpool Lime Street, which, was quite good. It's a good podcast, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Having already listened back to it, I can tell you, actually, I think it's quite good. But before all that, we've got to talk about a few games. The first game of the month was a trip away to Newcastle United, a team that had just got promoted, of course, last year, a team we have struggled against, and a manager we have struggled against, as Owen explained here.
Yes, to St James's Park, back on the holiday list after another season in the wilderness for them, but they're back in the big time, thanks in no small part to a certain Mr. R. Benitez. It's interesting actually because we've never been able to beat Benitez when he's been managing the opposition, which he's done with Valencia, of course, which is what first attracted us to him, and latterly with Chelsea. We've never been able to actually get one over on him. There's hope this game was going to be something different.
We did hope it was going to be something different, and it wasn't, straight up. Following on from our September review and our September podcast, we talked a lot about how we struggled in several fixtures. Burnley at home had been a problem. We'd drawn both our Champions League games, despite the fact we played well in all of them, and definitely should have won all of them. And yet again, we run into exactly the same problems. It was astonishingly infuriating. The lineup, actually, before we get into the game itself and explain basically what happened, the lineup was quite interesting. I mean, it was the strongest lineup we could have expected, with one unusual exception. Roberto Firmino was dropped, which hadn't really happened this season. He'd played pretty much every game up to this point. But Daniel Sturridge was in instead. Didn't seem to be a lot of reason for that. It seemed mostly that it was an issue of just resting Firmino. I mean, he had played a lot, that's true, but at the same time, why this game in particular, I'm not really sure. I mean, it was nice to see Sturridge in. rarely starts nowadays, but it was nice to see him starting, and he seems to guarantee a goal, or certainly threatens the goal more than sort of Firmino, who is a more, well, we talk about him being the false nine. I mean, that's not necessarily that fair, but at the same time, Sturridge is more of a traditional striker. But yeah, bit of a surprise, but otherwise pretty much the same lineup, and it was a very, very frustrating match. It did start well. For the first sort of half an hour or so, we actually played quite well and we threatened, but Rafa Benitez is very good at organising his sides. So, as you expect, it was very much attack v defence, which is sort of a recurring theme of the podcast and of the season so far. Until on the 29th minute, our fabulous little magician Philippe Coutinho arrives and does something a little bit special. Owen talks a little bit about that here.
And a wonderful strike, of course, from the wonderful strike master Philippe Coutinho. Beautiful hit. I mean, at this point, you could almost kind of just edit in any kind of description of a previous Coutinho goal, because they're all sort of... I've never known anyone make the spectacular look so ordinary just by the sheer repetition of it, but it was another kind of out-of-the-area strike. It was his 14th goal from distance for us since signing for us. That's the most any player has scored in that period. So that was, I think, January 2013. He joined, so in almost 5 years. I think Christian Eriksen is the next one down the list. He's got about 9 or so, but yeah, Coutinho way out in front in terms of the sort of long-range corker. I mean, the Newcastle keeper, who was Rob Elliott. Oh man, he's still going. Rob Elliott just couldn't get anywhere near it, really.
Yeah, it was pretty special. The irony there of Owen talking about editing in any Coutinho goal there. But it didn't take long for us to concede, less than 10 minutes, and yet again we've conceded a really, really poor goal. John Joe Shelby picks up the ball in the midfield. Most of our players are pushed high, and we've left Lovren and Matip at the back. And one pass through them, it was a ridiculous distance that was between the two players. And suddenly Joselu is in from out of nowhere. It's really comically bad. And then what's worse about this is Joselu's in. John Matip gets back and chases back to make the tackle. He makes the tackle. The ball cannons off Joselu, goes past Mignolet and dribbles over the line. I mean, it is... Well, Owen here will explain. It's not good.
Just poor defending. It wasn't just a weak shot. It was our fault. It wasn't. The problem is we score goals that nobody can deal with because they're just unstoppable. Whereas we concede goals that are just nobody can deal with because of incompetence. Do you know what I mean? It's not like we're scoring goals that are far better than the goals we concede. That's what's really annoying. It's not that we're just conceding immediately every game. It's that we're conceding such weak goals compared to the standard of goals we're actually scoring the other end. It doesn't seem fair. There's no parity between what we're doing at one end and what they're doing to us at the other. I would call that the weakest goal we conceded all season, actually. In terms of just the sheer, the way it just dribbled over the line, do you know what I mean? It was just, there was no force or anything behind it. And again, this is what I mean. Look at how much force Coutinho put on that. And, that could have gone in, 5 times in the time it took this one to just kind of roll over the line. It was... yeah, it's just more of the same. It's like September never ended. I would say it was almost not worth waking Billy Joe Armstrong up for.
I mean, apart from the terrible joke there, he is absolutely right. It does feel almost ludicrous that every goal we score we have to make such an effort for, and every goal we concede, it just happens so easily and comes so easily to the opposition. And this is appalling. These are two professional defenders. This is a professional team of footballers, and they're letting things like this happen, and we're letting it happen week after week. And this won't be the last time this comes up during the podcast. after this, the rest of the match, it's almost a bit of a non-event. It was not really much to talk about. We created chances in the second half. We did work hard. We had pretty much all the ball. Newcastle rarely threatened, but it was dire. Very comparative to the Burnley game earlier in September. It was just us attacking, them defending, us not finding a way through, and at the end of the match, same result, 1-1 away at Newcastle, which is just unacceptable, really. We're meant to have a team with title aspirations. You've got some of the best players in the country on our side, and we can't win these matches, and we've never been able to win these matches, or so rarely been able to win these matches. And it's, this is the sort of match that you would imagine a Man City would win, or a Chelsea would win, or a Spurs would win, and it's not good enough. But as Owen mentioned earlier, Rafa is still unbeaten against us, and will continue to be until, at the very least, the return leg at Anfield, if he's still there. Fair play to him, because obviously he's a man close to our hearts as Liverpool fans, but it's very, very frustrating. And it was very frustrating indeed. Frustration continues through to the next fixture, because in what should be, and has, over the course of the Premier League and the course of modern footballing history, been one of the most exciting games to look forward to, one of the biggest rivalries in top flight football, as Manchester United come to Anfield. But over the last couple of years, it's been awful. It's been turgid, those games. And, Jose Mourinho comes to Anfield, and, well, I'll let Owen explain.
Man United, they've really appointed a succession of dull managers. Not necessarily dull characteristically, although Mourinho is just like, everyone's bored of him now. But just the way they play football, like Van Gaal did not play exciting football. Mourinho plays even less exciting football. We saw how he set up for when Chelsea came to Anfield at the end of the 13-14 season. And it's just the same again, and it's just dull. And like you say, this is one of the kind of the biggest derbies in the league, in the country. And it's just, this is rubbish, wasn't it?
He's absolutely right. It was absolute garbage. At the same time, I wrote in my notes for the podcast, I don't really know what we expected apart from this. United turned up, Jose Mourinho turned up away from home to defend, and that's exactly what he did. Liverpool were the only team in it. We were the only team going forward, the only team trying to score, the only team who threatened. We did create chances, but, for Man United, Lukaku was just on his own, didn't do anything. The defenders had one of the easiest days of their season, and Mourinho came for the point and he got it. I've done this twice now, and I'm still really... we expected nothing else. And in a way, it's a bit of a compliment to us, because Liverpool seem to scare Jose Mourinho in many ways. He always turns up to us defending. You think about a few years ago when Gerrard famously slipped and we lost the title. Just thought about that again. When he slips and lost us the title, and how proud that Jose Mourinho was that he parked a bus against us. And then the last couple of years, they've both been dire draws, and they get a 1-0 win a few years ago. And it's always the same. He does exactly the same. And in many ways, it is a bit of a compliment to us, because he is scared of coming to Anfield. Owen here makes a very good point on this, actually.
He is scared of coming to Anfield because he can't manage a decent side. He can't put a side together that can beat us. And he hates Liverpool, Jose Mourinho, ever since we kind of did him over in the Champions League semi-final 12 years ago. And he can't beat us. So he stopped trying, because he knows it's actually more annoying to stop us playing than to have a decent game and actually win fair and square. Do you know what I mean?
And so, it ends up with a 0-0 draw that is so expected and so unremarkable, and at Anfield, a draw isn't, again, not really an acceptable result against any side, certainly a side who did what they did, we could have gone for a week and not scored. Although what doesn't help is something that we have already talked about on the podcast quite a lot, and that is Jurgen Klopp's use of substitutions, and mainly the timing of them. Yet again, I'm going to have to bring up that the timings of the substitutions were 78, 79 and 87 minutes. We've been playing for 80 minutes, doing exactly the same thing, hoping we try and break down a side that weren't going to get broken down for weeks, until we did anything about it. We took the front three off of Firmino, Coutinho and Salah, and put Solanke, Chamberlain and Sturridge on. And, I mean, to be fair, we actually had a couple of really good chances with Sturridge and Solanke on the pitch. I know Solanke missed a really good chance after Sturridge did some good work, and it's, you make these changes so late. What exactly are you expecting them to do? This is something, by the way, that will come up later, and will probably bore listeners, us talking about it all the time, but I just don't get it. I just don't understand why you wouldn't try and change something when you can see it's going wrong. Einstein's definition of madness. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But that's what happened. And we got a 0-0 draw with Manchester United at Anfield. Oh, God, it was frustrating. And so we return to the Champions League next. And, well, I mean, before we do that, Owen and I discussed kind of how we felt these attacking displays would eventually lead to something, and surely had to.
So, yeah, all these games we've had, and like say the end of September, start of October, we'd really bottled ourselves up, all these goals that weren't being scored, all these chances that weren't being taken. And you've got the sense, really, that, eventually the cork was going to come out of a bottle and we just absolutely batter somebody. And fortunately for us, after Man United was a trip to Slovenia to play Maribor. I mean, everything we just needed someone to just lie down and be shot at, really. And thankfully, Darko Milanic's side provided that.
He's absolutely right. Yeah, we were away in Maribor. First time we'd ever been there, in fact. First time we'd ever played the side. So, I mean, Owen was very excited about that. But yeah, all the goals that we've been waiting for kind of turned up in once. We did need this, to be fair. It was starting to feel like we were never going to score a bunch of goals again. And it was nice to do it away in the Champions League. We were very good. They were pretty bad. Defensive mistakes were a huge part of it. We did put out basically a full-strength side here. I mean, we put Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back for Gomez. We had Karius in goal, who is our regular Champions League goalkeeper this season. But apart from that, it was the same strong lineup. And it didn't take long to start running the goals in. After 4 minutes, Firmino scores. Defensive mistake, not the first time you'll hear that. And Salah nicks the ball, runs through, plays it on a plate for Firmino for 1-0. Then about 10 minutes later, after a bit of work down the right, James Milner puts a lovely ball in, and it's a great finish from Coutinho, sort of on the volley. Really had to be careful to control it. It's sort of a scuff, but it didn't look like it on, Coutinho. Coutinho is just so good that it looked like he was in complete control of that situation. And before even 20 minutes was up, Mohamed Salah, minute 3, broken through. Firmino breaks through for Salah, and Salah finishes it underneath the goalkeeper for 3. And I mean, we were running riot. It was genuinely incredible. It didn't, and then we sort of eased off for a little bit before 5 minutes before half time. A fourth goal goes in. Alberto Moreno doing well to beat the defenders, getting across the byline and playing it back. And I mean, this goal is credited to Mohamed Salah, but if you go and watch it back, Firmino and Salah sort of touched the ball at the same time. Genuinely, it's quite difficult to work out who scored. Not only because of the fact that both of them touched the ball at the same time, seemingly, not only because no cameras could really make a good deduction on who it was, but they just sort of celebrated together and wandered off. Which kind of got Owen and I thinking about, well, how do you decide? And more than anything else, is this one for the dubious goals panel?
I wonder what you would do in a situation like that as a player, if you genuinely weren't sure. Like, would you kind of let the other one have it? Would you kind of be really magnanimous and give it up? I mean, it's what you need is my favourite institution in football, which is the dubious goals panel. It's so kind of just arcane and ridiculous. Like, there's a whole panel that just sits there and looks at dubious goals, and it's like, A, it's the best job anyone could want. B, I just love whoever came up with it and thought, okay, guys, we need a panel to kind of assess dubious goals and, you know, who they actually went to. But what we need is a name for it. And after however many focus groups and whatever, they did just come up with the dubious goals panel. It's just, you know, it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's brilliant. What do they do if there's no dubious goals? What if there's a season of just all really clear-cut goals? Unpredictable life being on the dubious goals panel. You're never going to know if you're needed. Like 1 week, it's like a 0 hours contract, really, isn't it? You know, 1 week you might be assessing 20 goals, and then that might be it for a month. Who will stand up for the employment rights of the dubious goals panel?
Now, what I most enjoy about that clip is how it just sounds like the rambling nonsense of a man sat at a bus stop talking about the dubious goals panel. I'm sorry, Owen, but this was the only way to fix this. But yeah, 4-0 up by half-time through the dubious goal, credited to Salah. And what was actually quite nice at this stage, we could have easily eased off for the second half and just sort of settled with that and gone, okay, this is fine. But we seemed to just keep going in the second half. By the way, bear in mind, this is the first time in Champions League history an English side have been 4-0 up away from home after half-time. So already holding on to a couple of Champions League records. This is another one. And we were basically hunting down another couple because, you know, the biggest away win in Champions League history had been, there are a couple of sides. I think Marseille did it. I think, is it Spartak Moscow or Zenit St. Petersburg? One of those two has also done it. It was a 7-0 away win. So we were starting to think we could maybe hunt that down. Because, of course, Liverpool already have the highest Champions League win in history, joint along with Real Madrid, with an 8-0 win over Besiktas that we did a few years ago. So could we get not only the biggest win, which of course was at Anfield at home, and the biggest win in Champions League, could we get the biggest away win as well and complete the hat-trick? So 10 minutes into the second half, it was getting closer. Bobby Firmino scored a few with his head throughout the course of the season so far. Very much a threat at set pieces and crosses, seemingly. Heads in from a Coutinho free kick. And then he sort of did ease off a little bit, to be fair. But we still looked threatening, and they weren't really threatening much at all. We made some changes before the 80th minute, which is a bit of an irony, considering we didn't really need to make them at that point. But, you know, we see the usual trio of Sturridge, Chamberlain and Solanke coming on, which is always nice to see, and hopefully gives them a chance to try and score. And it promptly did. Sort of 5 minutes before the end of the game, Mr. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain scores his first goal for Liverpool, which is great, off some good work in the midfield. Daniel Sturridge plays a lovely little ball to Oxlade-Chamberlain, who has far too much pace with the defenders, slots it in, and it's 6. Which led to Owen telling us this, well, I was going to say interesting fact, but judge for yourself about the kit and a slightly unusual record.
And I say his first goal in a red shirt. But actually, what else was noticeable about this game was it was the first competitive appearance of our orange third kit. And by heck, didn't we do well? we should wear it every week. And then, as if being the highest scoring English away side in European football history, the joint highest scoring side of any nationality away in European history, the most goals ever scored in the first half of an away game by a British club in history. The first time we ever wore our orange highlighter kit in history, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's first Liverpool goal in history. There was one more record to be broken this night, because on the 90th minute, 2/3 of a beast himself, Trent Alexander-Arnold, scored our 7th goal on the night, and in doing so wrote himself into the history books, because it was the first time in 125 years that two players with a hyphen in their surname had ever scored in the same game for Liverpool.
Yes, he's absolutely right, to the interest of absolutely no one. Sorry, Owen, but I am in charge now. Yes, Trent Alexander-Arnold scored the 7th, his second in the Champions League, as well as the second for Liverpool, meaning he has scored as many Champions League goals as Everton. But it does mean a 7-0 victory makes us the joint highest away winning side in a Champions League game, and the highest English away winning side in Champions League history. So we have an awful lot of Champions League records, maintaining our crown as the kings of Europe. And it was very good, because it felt, it was a feel good game really in many ways, because as we mentioned, most of the last 6 weeks prior to this have been very frustrating. Not getting the results we wanted, everything, defence seeming nervous, of course, getting annihilated away from home by City, which was an awful result, and conceding 3 away at Leicester. Lots of goals conceded away from home. So it was nice to keep a clean sheet away from home and bag 7 in the process, which gave us a lot of confidence going into a game at... I'll let Owen explain.
So, yeah, it was exactly what we needed this game in terms of, optimism. And so it was with that optimism that we made a trip to yet another new Premier League ground. We've won at more different Premier League grounds than any other club in England. I think it's 52 different Premier League grounds we've taken 3 points at, not including Anfield. And despite playing the familiar foe of Tottenham Hotspur, it was a new one because they are at Wembley this season. Anfield South, as it used to be. I think it might even be our first ever league game at Wembley. And God, it was awful.
He's absolutely right. It was a fucking nightmare. I can't believe I have to talk about this again. Yeah, this was just awful. In many ways, it kind of feels weird because we had expected or hoped that a game like Maribor was coming. Creating a hatful of chances, but not being able to score them. It felt eventually we'd be able to unlock the door of a team and just give them hell. But at the same time, we've talked a lot about how terrible our defence has been, and the one goal we've conceded up to this point in the month, it had been a terrible goal to concede. And all it needed was a team with a very good attack to expose the frailties in our defence, and we were in for a hammering. And that's exactly what we got. A very good Spurs side, just tore us to shreds. It was genuinely one of the worst defensive performances I've seen us play in a long time. From the start, we were all over the place. The first goal Spurs score after just 4 minutes, it's horrible defensive errors. Alberto Moreno, who apparently is having a good season, I'm not sure I entirely agree. He's out of position. Dejan Lovren goes for a stupid challenge he can't make. There'll be more on him later. Mignolet comes out and he's in no man's land. I don't know what the earth he's doing, but he shouldn't be there. And then Matip's, nowhere to be found, and Harry Kane's just got a sort of volley tap in. He never should have it. It's unbelievable. And after that, you'd think, okay, we need to pick it up. Okay, early goal conceded, we can turn this over and go again. No, they were all over us. And after 12 minutes, it was 2-0 through Son. And I mean, this goal is genuinely hideous. And there is only one man to blame for that, and that is Dejan Lovren. No matter what Klopp said about trying to defend, the team, he should never be in that position, Dejan Lovren just gets caught onto the ball and lets them through with half the pitch to run into. And I mean, Harry Kane easily could have scored a second. Instead, he plays it to Son for a tap-in. It's horrible. It's horrible to watch your team performing so amateurishly. These are players who get paid an awful lot of money and are meant to be professionals. Like, if I was that bad at my job, I'd have been fired by now. Genuinely astonishing how bad they were. It could have been anything. That is until the 24th minute, where we somehow get back into it. And we'll get back to the Plastic Scousers podcast in its proper form. This is the end of the solo Matt Simpson half an hour. I apologise for how it's been, but this was the only real option we had. Yes, we're going to jump back to the traditional format Well, I shall be discussing one Jordan Henderson's contribution to proceedings and how we got back into the game. So for now, let's hand you back. So yeah, I mean, Jordan Henderson, who hasn't really had a lot to shout about and not done that well this season, puts in a wonderful through ball, and it's that man Mo Salah yet again. He sort of scuffs the finish past the keeper, goes underneath Lloris, and he's puts back in it.
Yeah, I mean 2-1 at sort of still over an hour to go. You think that looks not too bad. And it looks like it might end up being one of those games where our defence are absolutely awful, but our attacks just kind of outscore theirs, and it just becomes one of those absolutely crazy games where neither side properly defends, and it's just complete free-for-all.
But I mean, let's be honest, we didn't really threaten a huge amount more. We did, maybe a couple of chances after that, but I mean, defensively, we were still all over the place.
Yeah, and actually it was kind of, our defensive problems were kind of brought into sharp focus on the 31st minute when Jurgen Klopp broke the habit of a lifetime and made an early substitution. Dane Lovren came off, and that's sort of quite unprecedented.
Yeah,
to see make a tactical substitution, not like an injury forced one, after half an hour. One of your central defenders as well. Like, it's so rare that Jurgen Klopp will substitute one of his central defenders, that after over a year at the club, John Matip and Ragnar Klavan, neither of them have ever been substituted.
Wow.
Ever in a Liverpool shirt. So that shows how averse Jurgen Klopp is to the idea of substituting central defenders. But yeah,
it was very damning, wasn't it?
It was very damning, but you'd be hard pressed to argue it wasn't justified.
No, it was a real shock. It was no injury, no sort of. It was just, you've been appalling, and I'm going to have to make an example of you, I guess. I mean, unfortunate for Lovren, who isn't a bad guy, but let's be honest, he's had enough chances now. He's off after half an hour, and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's brought on, which means that the lineup gets really strange now. I mean, we're playing Emre Can moves to right back, which has never happened. Joel Matip and Gomez are at centre half, and Moreno at left back. It's all a bit of a mess, really. Actually, it reminds me of the Brendan Rodgers era in many ways.
Yeah, it was a lot like that, actually, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was that kind of dampened any sort of optimism that we had after Salah scored, when you thought we might sort of get back into it again. Suddenly you were just looking at this and thought, actually, this is just a mess.
Yeah, it was always going to be. We always knew it was a mess. I mean, that was a lot of I was relieved to see Lovren come off, to be honest with you, but it didn't really get that much better. We did maybe created a couple of chances, but Spurs looked like they were going to score at every opportunity. Second half, well, it was just before half time, Dele Alli scored a third. Yet more poor defending. Second half, Harry Kane scores a fourth. We're sort of slightly better in the second half because Kane had to work pretty hard to score the fourth goal, but he still does. We sort of tried to firm it up, but we're done. We look like a beaten team.
I mean, it was. We looked like a League One side. Never mind a beaten team. We looked like a League One team.
It was horrible, really.
It was just. It was, and it really kind of put the sort of previous performance into perspective, and it kind of reminded you that we were breaking all these records and scoring for fun, but we were playing, with all respect to them, a bunch of Slovenians. Put us up against not even the best side in the league, who weren't even playing at their best in a stadium where it isn't even really their home ground, and we just got absolutely walked over.
It was thoroughly deserved.
And put us back down to 9th in the table, which after what was that, 10 games, was just
And
You
just to mention as well, it then means we now have the worst away defence in the entire league, worse than Palace, who are at the bottom of the table. I mean, yes, the Man City result was an anomaly because of what happened, but we still let it happen, and this just adds to it, and it's not good enough. And I remember I sent you an article I read on This Is Anfield, which I always enjoy reading. And it made a very good point that this was always coming. And I mean, yes, Moreno's doing better this season, but he was back to his old self here. Gomez was, naive and obviously, inexperienced. Matip's gone really off the boil this season. We've already talked about how poorly bad Lovren, a player we're paying $100,000 a week to, by the way, and he's worth apparently £20 million, playing worse than I could in that position. And most significantly of all, Simon Mignolet, who, yes, he's been better, but he's not the long-term solution to this problem. And how long can he keep getting away with making mistakes and being a nervous part of our defensive unit before he gets punished for it? Because seemingly that's not ever going to happen.
Yeah, it's what's depressing is that we knew our defence wasn't good enough, and we did nothing. And it's basically let them off the hook for a series of poor performances last season. And it's just kind of, we're rewarding mediocrity, do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I mean, actually, if you look at kind of our results so far this season, we've only lost twice in the league, which, I mean, this was our 9th game in the league, so, that's 30% of our games, which when you put it like that doesn't sound great, but it's just the manner in which we've lost. In those 2 defeats we've conceded 9 goals and we've scored 1. I mean, that's just mind-bogglingly poor. We just crumple. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because you say that we've not sorted our defence out since Rodgers was there. We've bought in 3 players. Joel Matip, who I still have faith in, probably the only centre back who comes out with any credit in our side at all at the moment, with the exception of Joe Gomez, really. Ragnar Klavan, who was always brought in to be a backup and is a mediocre one at that. And the completely forgotten Andy Robertson, who we've not mentioned because he hasn't got in the fucking team all goddamn season. And why the hell have we bought him if that's going to happen, particularly with Moreno in front of him?
Well, it's because Moreno has I don't quite see it myself. Apparently he's got a lot better this season. Everyone seems to be saying it. He's really kind of turned things around and he's having the best form of his Liverpool career, which isn't saying an awful lot.
No.
And this is a man who was kept up with his left back position all last season by a midfielder. So the bar was set pretty low for Alberto Moreno. And he has played well, and he's played a lot better, but...
I'm sorry, but you can't go from a 5 to a 6, from a 4 to a 6 every week, and somehow you deserve to stay in the team.
Yeah, I mean, he's still not good enough if we want to be challenging for the title. And obviously this season, we're not going to be challenging for the title. We can say that now already. But he's still probably not quite good enough if you want to be challenging for top 4. Now, is Andy Robertson any better? We just know because we've not seen him play. He's played 3 times, and he's played well those 3 times, but he's just going to stagnate. And it means that what we're going to end up getting when Moreno, say, gets injured or reverts to being catastrophically awful is a rusty, out of practice, out of focus player who isn't any better than Moreno would be. So it's poor management, I think. And I feel really sorry for Andy Robertson.
Oh, I do, absolutely. And you'd wonder what he's doing wrong to not even be given a chance. Moreno plays week in, week out. I mean, it's either that or Moreno has some dirt on Klopp and won't let him go, and he has to play. Do you know what I mean? That's the only other option I can see.
Well, same with Lovren. You know who else I feel sorry for, Matt?
Go on.
Sacco. Because he was popular with the fans. He was an unpredictable but a really good player for us. And, whatever he did to Jurgen Klopp, or said to Jurgen Klopp, or whatever, whatever he did, was it worse than watching Dejan Lovren almost single-handedly cock up our title chances for yet another season? Was it worse for not winning the league and becoming the laughing stock of the country because we've got Dejan Lovren just dicking around at the back?
It's and what baffles me is this has been going on year after year after year, and no one seems to be doing anything about it.
Well, this is it. Like, what are they? What are the coaches doing at Melwood? You've got same with John Achterberg and the goalkeepers. Like, we haven't had a reliable goalkeeper for about 5 years. You know, Karius kind of came in and immediately became rubbish. Mignolet was decent, but has, regressed. Pepe Reina in his last few years was like sort of totally unreliable for us. We've not had a really solid keeper between the sticks probably since the Benitez era.
No, since Reina was untouchable.
It was good. Let's say it. Yeah, so there's serious problems presenting themselves week after week, month after month, season after season, but just nobody seems to be bothered about addressing.
Well, it's what annoys me most is we're not people punish. So I'm going to move. I'm going to sort of half move on because I think it's the best way to describe this is our final game in the Premier League in the month is the first time we've ever played Huddersfield. Of course, David Wagner and Jurgen Klopp very much good friends, and obviously very exciting potential. Very exciting opportunity to see the two clubs in action. Huddersfield, I'm a big fan of. So, yeah, this was potentially something to look forward to. But, of course, all the pre-match build-up was dominated by what the lineup would be and what would Klopp decide to do after this calamity.
And what did he decide to do? He decided to start Dejan Lovren in central defence with Joel Matip, Alberto Moreno and Joe Gomez in front of Simon Mignolet.
When I saw that lineup, I almost laughed. I thought... there've been okay. It'd only been rumours in the press the week before that the changes were going to be made. Karius was going to be brought in. Gomez was going to move to centre defence. Robertson was going to be in. Trent Alexander-Arnold was going to come in. It's going to be a real rejig and a real chance to kind of say, right, let these defenders. Okay, we're playing Huddersfield, who are not the strongest team in the league. Still very much a threat though. They beat Man United a couple of weeks before this.
Which was fantastically satisfying.
Of course, absolutely. You thought, right, this might be a very good opportunity to see how these players go, and yet he did nothing. And the only saving grace in the end was that Lovren got injured in the warm up and was replaced by Klavan before the start of the game.
And I mean that says a lot about kind of Klopp's stubbornness. Is that the only time Lovren will get dropped is when he physically can't play. And some people would say he physically can't play every week, but he's still on the pitch. But as in when we've got no choice, when he's actually injured, that is the only time he won't get a game. And that's just not on. Do you know what I mean?
I was so angry that people who weren't doing their jobs properly, people who were performing poorly, and people who've been doing this for so long are not being punished. And for me... when there's great opportunities, like Joe Gomez is potentially more and more, I think, a centre-back for Liverpool. He looks so good. He's so calm and composed. Give him the experience of centre-back. Trent Alexander-Arnold is one of the brightest prospects we have. Andy Robertson can't get a game, for God's sake. Give him a fucking game. Yeah. Oh, God, it makes me so angry.
I mean, it's the same with Trent Alexander-Arnold in that, he's only become, the starlet that he is because he's been playing sort of first team football. There's a reason why we're all talking excitedly about Trent Alexander-Arnold and not Lloyd Jones, because Trent Alexander-Arnold is actually proving himself in the big games and learning. But the more that we persist with Lovren, the more Gomez is playing at right back and the more Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't going to progress. So you're not just kind of holding the team back, you're holding the individual players back from achieving their potential. And again, same with Andrew Robertson. Like, he's obviously a bit older, but, how is he supposed to kind of develop as a footballer? Because he's still got a lot of time and a lot of development to do. If he's just, 3 appearances since July. It's
It's shocking, isn't it?
yeah. Kind of looking at the game itself, there was one further cause for utter, hair pulling out, kind of bile spilling, just sheer nonsensical rage on the 42nd minute, wasn't there? So just for context of this, the lineup other than the defence, we had Wijnaldum, Henderson, and crucially James Milner starting in the middle, with Salah and Firmino and Sturridge up front. Coutinho was pretending to be injured again.
No, Coutinho and Mane had been out for most of this month, which is why we haven't really mentioned him.
Yeah.
And Coutinho, picked up an injury, so couldn't play in this game either.
I mean, it did mean, that combined with Lovren pulling out of the squad at the last minute, meant that it was a first appearance in the match day 18 for quite a while of young Mr. Ben Woodburn.
Of course.
Who again I think can feel quite rightly aggrieved that he's played once all season. He's played more times for Wales in 17-18 than he has for Liverpool.
Very true.
Which is, good for him in terms of his international career, but yeah, it's not going to help him develop with us very much. Anyway, that's beside the point. But so James Milner starting on the pitch was what I wanted to highlight there.
The first half pretty much went as you'd have expected. Huddersfield sat back, didn't create a whole lot. We tried to score, blah blah blah, yakety schmackety.
Yakety schmackety. And then talk us through the penalty.
I can't remember it. Can you?
Not really, to be honest.
I can't remember what happened.
What I remember mainly is the fact that despite being on the pitch, and despite being our main penalty taker, despite scoring something like 7 penalties last season.
7 out of 8, I think.
7 out of 8. He only missed 1. That was last one he missed. Despite that, James Milner wasn't selected to take the penalties. Now there had been 2 penalties already this season that he hadn't been selected to take, mainly because he hadn't been on the pitch at the time, so Roberto Firmino had taken them. He scored against Watford on the opening day of the season, then missed against Sevilla in mid-September. But for some obscure and unknown reason, Mohamed Salah was chosen to take the penalty, not James Milner. Of course, he missed.
Of course he did. I mean, it was the international break in between these 2 games, and Salah had scored a winning penalty to take his team through to the World Cup. And that was Klopp's reasoning behind it.
Which is great and all, and we should say congratulations to Egypt on their first appearance at the World Cup. Certainly in my lifetime, I think in your lifetime as well, 1990, their last appearance at the World Cup. But that's almost like beside the point. Do you know what I mean? We are not Egypt. We have a better penalty taker in our squad. We shouldn't be, in actual games that are still 0-0, that we need to win when we're 9th in the table. We shouldn't be basing our kind of tactical decisions on, sort of nods to how, the African World Cup qualifying's been going on. Why are we doing that? That doesn't make any sense at all.
No, I think there has to be a penalty taker who is assigned the penalty taker. As you say, if James Milner isn't on the pitch, then Firmino's taking, right? That seems to be where we're at. Both James Milner and Roberto Firmino were on the pitch at this point.
And even, say Milner's not on the pitch, okay, fine. If your number 1 isn't there, then you can maybe allow the kind of Egypt sentiment thing to creep in, give it to Salah. But he's on the pitch. He has to stand there on the edge of the box and watch as Salah runs up and fluffs it. How must that feel for him? What a kick in the teeth for Milner.
Yeah, it was so infuriating.
And Milner, who is kind of on his way to becoming the new Lucas in terms of he'll play where he's told to, he'll get on with it, he won't complain, he's just a great servant to the club. And this is how he gets rewarded for that. Do you know what I mean? It's just not fair on him.
Baffling. And yeah, you're right, he is becoming the new Lucas. The more you say, actually, I hadn't thought about it like that, but yeah, he is the new Lucas, isn't he, in many ways?
I mean, he's slightly slightly better, I think, at the moment. He's kind of, less calamitous. I love Lucas, but
He had his,
I think
he had his moments, didn't he?
He did. I think Milner's got the edge, kind of skill-wise, but yeah. So that was annoying. Fortunately,
the second half went a bit better, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
It took a while, but on the 50th minute, Daniel Sturridge capitalising on a poor mistake from Tom Smith at the back for Huddersfield. Lovely little dink over the keeper. And it took a mistake to have to break them down, but maybe we hadn't had that much luck with those things of late, so, maybe it's coming round.
It was a lovely little dink, wasn't it?
Great finish. Rolling back the years, Sturridge, in many ways.
Yeah, it was a proper kind of, old-fashioned Sturridge goal. And then Roberto Firmino 8 minutes later from a corner, wasn't it?
Yeah, from that man Millie himself, proving his set-piece qualities by whipping a ball in. Firmino, free header at the near post. He gets quite a few of those, by the way. Don't forget, second header already. Scored a few this season. Underrated as a predator on set-pieces and on crosses. 2-0. And by this point, Huddersfield, you had offered almost nothing. You suddenly just had Liverpool going after them again and again, and this was a nice way to sort of see us playing after what had been a horrible trip to Wembley.
Yeah, it was nice to see us actually kind of actually improve during a game. Do you know what I mean? Because so far this season we've either been kind of good and let it slip, we've been good all the way through, like against Maribor, or we've been kind of turgid all the way through, like against Spurs. What we don't see very often is a team that kind of comes out, has a lot of really frustrating things about it, but then actually kind of rectifies them within the 90 minutes. And actually, that was probably, in a way, it was our most satisfying result of the month, because we actually kind of put the bad performance behind us and actually got the result. Gini Wijnaldum then scored on the 75th minute. It was basically over before that, but this was a kind of sealed the deal.
It was a great finish as well. He's struggling to find room, had some jink a couple of times, then eventually whacks one in off the bar. Great finish.
Yeah,
and he scores at home again.
It's what he does. He does it well.
It's nearly 2.5 seasons as well. It's baffling, isn't it?
Is it 2.5 seasons since he scored an away goal? Is that including Newcastle as well? Is it?
Yeah. Because he's been with us for a season and a half plus season at Newcastle. Last time he scored away from home was in Holland.
Blimey.
Yeah.
Home-loving guy.
But there by that point, very much reminiscent of maybe the Middlesbrough game on the last day of the season last year. 3-0, eventually fairly comfortable. Just took a bit longer than it should have done.
Yeah. It was very similar to that, wasn't it? And Wijnaldum scored. So.
Yeah, absolutely right. So a very decent end to what has been quite a turbulent month, really.
Yeah, not been an easy month. Been some absolute nightmares. Been some kind of crazy, ecstatic moments like the Maribor game. So all in all, not really sure what to kind of make of it. Would you say we improved in October compared to September?
I think I felt more confident going into November. We were starting to find our game again. So
yeah, we were definitely sort of finding our momentum, just in time for it to be interrupted by an international break.
Always.
But we will find out more about that in the November podcast.
Absolutely.
But now, Matt, what have we got in the October podcast?
Oh, I'm so excited about this. It's one of my growing, ever increasingly favourite moments of our podcasts. We're going to have another little discussion about our Despicable 11.
Yes.
We're going through the squad numbers one by one in a typical sort of 4-4-2 formation. Starting, of course, with number 1, we put Adam Bogdan as our goalkeeper. Last month, we picked our number 2, which was your favourite player ever, Owen, in Philip Dagan.
Philip Dagan of a punctured lung.
The man made of glass himself. And this month, we go to number 3, traditionally the left-back position.
Yes. And there's been some good left-backs down the years.
There has, but there has been quite a few stinkers too.
Yes. So let's talk about the stinkers.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this.
I mean, there's one obvious one that springs to mind,
Yep.
but he's so obvious, I'm not going to choose him first of all. I'm going to go right back to the early days of the Premier League era. And Julian Dix,
Mm-hmm.
who is revered at West Ham, believe it or not. He's actually he's such a kind of West Ham hero. They've got his face on a plaque in the pavement outside the Olympic Stadium.
Wow.
Yeah, next to people like Bobby Moore, Trevor Brooking, and Paolo Di Canio, the popular fascist.
Yep.
So, yeah, I can't remember who the other ones are now, but it's basically like a kind of like walk of fame of like the kind of, West Ham's greatest ever players. And next to like England's World Cup winning captain and Trevor Peters and all of that is Martin Peters, sorry, is bloody Julian Dix. So a glorious career at West Ham, a somewhat inglorious career at Liverpool. He only made 28 appearances in one season. Where to begin? He was fat. He was slow. He had all the agility of an articulated lorry. He had all the mobility of a three-piece suite and footstool. His method of defending was, there are some defenders who just don't defend. They just kind of back off and back off and back off and let the defender run past them.
Yeah.
And there are some defenders who actually, are graceful and they actually go forward and they tackle people and they depossess people and they intercept.
Yeah.
Julian Dix was neither of those. Julian Dix would just run into them, and basically just like take him out. I think he played the man 3 times as often as he ever played the ball. When he did have the ball, he would give it straight back to the opposition, almost just so he could then clatter them again. He wasn't even any good going forwards. He was just like, it was your classic Graham Souness signing, in that there was just sort of the contrast between what we had 5 years before him, sort of the Dalglish team of late 80s, to what we had then. It was just like, oh man, how has this fallen apart so quickly?
No, you are right. You are right. I mean, he was the last Graham Souness signing, of course.
Wasn't he?
Yeah, he did. Souness sort of, brought him in, and basically he was the only player who played. Only person who played him, because after 5 months he then left the club, and Roy Evans wasn't impressed for the reasons you've mentioned, the overweight and the fitness problems and the general attitude problems. And so he spent pretty much the entire time after Souness left playing with the kids' teams and the reserves, before leaving at the end of that season to go back to West Ham again.
I mean, that would separate the wheat from the chaff and the kids' teams, wouldn't it? Coming up against Julian Dix when you're about 18.
Good God.
Yeah, that would put you off football for life. Although there is one good quality to his name. Well, not quality exactly, but record. Which I'm struggling to think of such a prestigious record given to such an ill-deserving player. But he was the last Liverpool player to ever score in front of the Kop when it was all standing. Before the original Spy on Kop was dismantled basically and turned into an all-seater stand at the end of the 93-94 season. The last game was against Norwich, and Liverpool actually lost 1-0. So the last player to ever score in front of the standing Kop was a Norwich player whose name now escapes me. So you have to go back to the game before to find out the last Liverpool player to put the ball in the net in that famous terraced end, and it was Julian bloody Dix.
Amazing.
And I genuinely can't think of such a poor player having such a kind of bit of history attached to them. So there's him. Who else is there? I was
just wanted to quickly mention a couple of other input points about Julian Dix, actually, before we move on from him. It did end up back at West Ham. Played there pretty much until he retired in 99, then played again in 2001 for Canvey Island 2 years later. He was sent off 9 times throughout his career. Which, nowadays Sergio Ramos gets sent off once a month, but at the time that was quite dramatic. In fact, until recently, he was first team coach under Slavan Bilic at West Ham.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, only left, of course, I don't even know if he's left yet. Spoilers: Slaven Bilic got fired as West Ham manager. But yeah, so he's his coach there. Also was a professional golfer at one point, apparently, Julian Dix. So there we go. My favourite thing about it is Souness, of course, a man that you and I don't really respect that much. You said that, Souness seemed to be unravelling our great side of the 80s. He, in fact, claimed that Julian Dix would be in his best 11 players he's ever worked with.
Graham Souness said that.
Yes.
My God. If ever there was a reason to not respect Graham Souness anymore, that would be it.
So there you go. I thought that was worth mentioning. But yeah, as you said, let's move on to another player.
Well, actually, you have just reminded me of your talk of him coaching at West Ham has reminded me. I've got Julian Dix has had a very brief managerial career, managing kind of the Essex seaside towns, Wivenhoe Town, for a bit in 2009. Grays Athletic, so again, sort of staying in the Essex area. West Ham Ladies.
Yep.
And Sealand, which for those of you not up to date on your micronational politics, Sealand is they claimed a country based on an old World War II anti-aircraft platform in the North Sea.
What?
Which is actually 50 years old this year. It's 50 years since it declared independence from the United Kingdom. And it is, appropriately enough, about the size of a football pitch. Yeah, it's it claims to be.
How many people are on this thing?
Well, this is the thing. It's a bit of a sort of novelty because it's not really got a permanent population, mainly because it is a decaying concrete platform in the North Sea. But they do maintain an international football team, and Julian Dix was actually manager of it for a international, in inverted commas, football tournament that took place on the Isle of Man in 2013.
That kind of makes me like him a bit more.
Me too, actually. Me too. So
all right. Anyway,
enough Dix facts.
Yeah, enough about offshore, slightly unusual, not countries. Let's move on to another player who actually has a very interesting record for us, but was complete dross, or should I say DOS. It's Andrea Desena.
I see what you did there.
Thank you very much. I literally did that on the fly.
See what you did there. You son of a gun.
Before joining Liverpool, I'm sort of slightly baffled as to how on earth he ended up at our club in many ways. Because he was relegated twice at his first two clubs in 3 seasons. Played at Udinese for a year under joint ownership before we signed him to replace John Arisa. He was appallingly bad for most of that. Not necessarily always his fault. He was used to playing in a back five, playing as a sort of left wing back, not used to playing in the back four, which he struggled with pace. He struggled with the idea of sort of getting up and down the flank quicker. It never really looked comfortable in that position. The fans were always on his back. He was in and out the side a lot. Of course, the one great record is he's probably got, in terms of the goals the teams you've scored against for Liverpool, I don't think there's much better than Man United and Real Madrid, of which he scored basically the same goal twice, sort of lobbing the keeper for about 30 yards, to score the fourth goals with a 4-1 win at United at Old Trafford, and then a 4-0 win against Real Madrid. God, weren't there the days? Quite amazing. You need to go back and see these if you've never seen them. He ended up only staying at Liverpool for about 18 months before joining Napoli, where he sort of spent quite a few years and probably had his best time as a player. Certainly for us, though, just not good enough, and unfortunately had to replace arguably the best left-back of the Premier League era for us in John Arisa. The thing is, apart from those two, if it wasn't for those 2 goals, he may be considered the worst of all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. He signed. I think he signed in the same summer as Philip Dagan, didn't he?
Mm.
And I've always lumped the two of them together in my mind. I've always associated them with each other in the same way as you'd do someone like I don't know, Sammy Hippier and Stefan Onshow.
Mm.
signed at the same time, formed, a really formidable partnership. These two signed at the same time and formed a terrible partnership. I mean, they didn't play together very often because, as we know, Philip Dagan's actually, made out of glass. But they're about equal standard, except Dagan didn't have the goals to sort of salvage him like Dossena did. I can't really put it better than you had, but what a great way to to score your only 2 Liverpool goals at Old Trafford. And was it at Anfield or was it at the Bernabeu?
Anfield against
Real Madrid. But yeah, like you say, in identical circumstances. I've got a soft spot for him, to be honest.
Really?
Just because of those 2 goals. Like he is, I don't know, a bit like Julian Dix, I guess. I feel he's kind of almost carved out a place in the club's folklore. It's modern kind of, folklore.
Well, let me give you a few other...
Just for a really kind of obscure and reason that as a player, he's not deserving of.
No, you're absolutely right. Let me give you a few other things, because I always like to talk about, despicable players isn't necessarily despicable just for being at Liverpool. In fact, in 2010-11, Liverpool faced Napoli with Dossena in the side, and Dossena played a horror back pass which Gerrard nicked to score at Anfield. So, that's not necessarily the worst thing he's ever done. After a couple of other seasons, he ended up at Paolo Di Canio's Sunderland, a player that we've already... Fascists were already mentioned when he was managing Sunderland. The only thing memorable about his time there was one of the worst tackles I've ever seen in my life on Hull's David Myler. Don't go and watch that back if you don't want to. It was an appalling challenge. Kind of ended his career there.
I don't remember that. I'll have to have a look at that.
Yeah, it's not nice. It's a really nasty challenge. And then after that, he ended up at Leyton Orient.
I was going to say this. Yeah, he was it about 2014, 2013?
Yeah.
2014, 2015, he was, did about 6 months at Leyton Orient?
Yep, baffling really, isn't it?
I mean, see, this is what, I can never make my mind up as to whether that's a real sign of a player's decline, that he's gone from playing for Liverpool and scoring at Old Trafford to turning out for Leyton Orient, or if I actually respect players more when they do that.
Because they're looking to play football.
Well, they just want to play football, and they acknowledge that they're not the player they were, and this isn't just limited to like bad players. This is like kind of decent players who go on to play in the lower leagues as well. Someone like James Beattie, I think, did it. You kind of acknowledge that you're not at the top level anymore, but you don't just kind of quit because of that. You actually, the desire to just keep playing week in week out supersedes that, and you end up turning out for. Like Leyton Orient or Accrington Stanley or Billericay Town in Jermaine Pennant's case. I think that's actually admirable. I think more footballers should do that.
I don't disagree. However, I would like to mention that during that 6-month spell at Leyton Orient, he did get arrested at Harrods for trying to steal a jar of honey.
A jar?
I'm not making any of this up.
Why a jar of honey?
So apparently the story goes that he accidentally put it in his bag and had forgotten about it, or he just walked out with a jar of honey and something else. I can't remember what it was.
But God, what is he? Winnie the Pooh?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, literally the first Despicable 11 candidate who's actually committed a crime.
Oh, I don't know. I bet Julian Dix has committed a few, to be honest.
Well, yeah, mainly insurance fraud, I suspect, but. Legally, by the way, no, of course he hasn't. We haven't, these are all allegations. That really made me laugh as a funny fact. And do you know, actually, Dosena's still playing.
Is he?
Yeah,
where's he?
He's in the 3rd tier of Italian football at a club called Piacenza.
Piacenza, Cal 1919, I believe.
Oh, yeah, someone's been doing the research.
Just as soon as you said Piacenza, I'm like, I know which Piacenza you're talking about. Yeah. Again, fair play to him. You just keep him playing, even though he's finally found his level.
The tier of Italian football.
Sounds
like right.
Again, though, we need to be really careful with this, because like with the whole Julian Dix thing about managing Sealand, the knowledge that Andrea Dossena has stolen a jar of honey from Harrods makes me like him more.
Okay.
And I used to think my favourite Andre Dossena thing was that he'd scored at Old Trafford. But the fact he's stolen honey from Harrods. I mean, that's the best thing a Liverpool player has done to, somewhere associated with Fulham since Igor Bishkin scored his first goal in a 4-2 win there in the tail end of 2004. It's just, I've got so many further questions, Matt.
Well, I tell you what, I'll answer those another time because we should probably move on.
Well, to link one to the next, Andrea Dossena, for all his faults, was actually nominated this time last year for Liverpool's greatest ever A to Z. By yours truly, running out of players beginning with a D to nominate, admittedly. So he can't be all bad. And actually, my next suggestion for maybe the Despicable 11 is going to be another player who was nominated for the all-time greatest alphabet of Liverpool players. Sort of by default, it's Christian Ziege.
Christian Ziege.
Who was just a bit pants, really, wasn't he? He just wasn't, there's very few things I can say to really emphasise just because he wasn't bad like kind of Andrea Dossena was, and he wasn't wrong like Julian Dix was. He wasn't evil. He was just there. It was just a really left back. And I can't even give any particular stats. He played 32 times for Liverpool in a season. That's not too bad. He only cost $6 million. He wasn't like a rip-off. He looked like, he even scored a penalty in the League Cup final in 2001 in the shootout. He won 5 trophies with us, but I can't really give any proper stats to kind of show just how bad he was, other than to say this. He was kept out of the team for a bit by Gregory Vigneault.
Oh dear.
I mean, what does that say about a left back?
Oh dear me, that isn't good, is it?
Yeah.
I've got a couple of things that might help to add the case. He won titles in his formative years, twice at Bayern Munich of all clubs, as well as at Milan in Italy, before eventually moving to Middlesbrough, who were at the height of their powers at the time. Doing pretty well. I tell you what, one thing that is despicable, not necessarily about him, but about how we signed him. If you remember the coming of this summer, the whole Virgil van Dijk affair and the illegal tapping up of players. Well, we've been doing that for a little while apparently because we were fined £20,000 for tapping up Ziege.
Oof. That was not worth the money.
No, it really wasn't. It's funny how things change from you're going to be fined 20 grand for this to you're going to be banned for 2 years from buying players. So it's interesting. Yeah. It's an interesting historical kind of juncture we witness. But he did still sign for us anyway. Following on from that, so as you say, just sort of had problems with form and really didn't. Considering he was a title winner, 3-time title winner with some of the biggest clubs in the world at the time, it's just so bizarre that he was just so average. Only a year later we offloaded him to Spurs, who at the time were pretty mid-table. He was nowhere near as good as he should have been. That's what I think the problem is.
I mean, yeah, he had such a good pedigree, but he was just so underwhelming. What's quite remarkable is how long he'd been playing before we signed him. Considering he was a relatively sort of young player, he was, we had quite a young team at the time. He sort of came in to fit in with that. He was sort of, you wouldn't call him an old hand. He wasn't like when we signed Ragnar Klavan. How long he'd been playing. He played at the 1992 Olympics. 8 years before we signed him.
He started in 1990 for Bayern.
Yeah. I mean, he'd really kind of built up enough to make you think he was going to be good, and he wasn't. And again, just to kind of emphasise just how not bad, but just average he was, just so underwhelming. And not only was he kept out of Liverpool team by Gregory Vigneault, but if you search on Wikipedia Christian ZI, he's not even the top result.
Who is?
Christian Zionism.
Maybe check
who incidentally played for West Brom.
He did.
But,
yeah, didn't have a good time out in Tel Aviv.
No.
So, Let's move on to my penultimate nomination for this. Jimmy Traore.
Ah,
Jimmy
yeah.
Traore. Jimmy Traore. Indeed signed as a centre back, but played predominantly as a left back for us. So I feel more fitting of this category. He wasn't necessarily the worst player that we'd ever had at left back. Certainly not. I say playing out of position didn't help, but it was the high profile errors and mistakes that I think make him deserving of being here.
Yeah. I mean, which 5 in particular were you thinking of?
Which 5? I mean, there's a couple of key ones. It was almost the opposite of Andrea Desena, because he was mostly awful and had a couple of great moments. Jimmy Traore was relatively all right with some absolute shockers. Of course, the main one being Burnley away in the Cup.
Yes.
One of the most comical own goals Liverpool have ever conceded.
Ever. And we've conceded some pretty comical own goals in a team that's had Martin Skirtle and Jamie Carragher both play for them for years. Yeah, this was 2005, January 2005. I'm not even sure how to describe it. It was it was a sort of step over back heel.
Yeah, he was trying. It looked like he was trying to half Cruyff turn it in a weird kind of way, and got it horribly wrong. And it just sort of agonisingly, basically back heels it behind him, and it trickles over the line in agonisingly slow fashion. And even before it's gone in, he's just got his head in his hands. It's one of the worst own goals you'll ever see.
That goal, his general propensity for god awful mistakes did actually provoke one of the best, most creative chants from the cockpit.
I'm so glad you brought this up. I absolutely adore it. This is maybe because I didn't actually know about this until I looked this up. I think this is my new favourite song.
I'm not going to do all the verses, but basically the chorus was. Do you want to take us through it, Matt?
No, I'd love to hear your singing voice on this.
I mean, I can't sing, but don't blame it on the Finnan, don't blame it on the Biscan, don't blame it on the Hammam, blame it on Traore. Don't blame it on the Finnan, don't blame it on the Biscan, don't blame it on the Hammam, blame it on Traore.
He just can't. He just can't. He just can't control his feet. He just can't. He just can't. He just can't control his. It's so good.
It's amazing. It works on so many levels. It's half of that would be great, but it's the fact that it's got another bit afterwards that still fits.
It's so good.
It's almost as good as one which we will come to in next month's podcast about Torben Peachnik, which I may have revealed to you last month by accident, Matt, but is still my favourite chant for any Liverpool player ever.
But the listeners won't know because I cut it out in the edit.
You did, but yeah, but for that song, I don't think he's that. I'm going to lay my cards on the table here. I think he actually improved, De Traore. And actually, he's got a Champions League winners medal.
Yeah,
which is mad.
So
mental.
Yeah, there's quite a few terrible players who have Champions League winners medals.
Yeah, a lot of them played for us, but Hosseini, for example, Igor Bishkin, Harry Kewell. But I don't think he was as bad as the others.
No, I don't necessarily think it was. I think it's just unfortunate for him that is what people remember. Is that one horrible moment and the whole song that then goes around. And that song isn't just for that one moment. That song is because there were a lot of protest. He actually gave away the free kick for the first goal in the Champions League final when we went 1-0 down as well.
He played in the Champions League final. He started in the Champions League final at left back.
He played the whole 120.
Which is insane because John Anarisa was still on our books then.
Well, he played in midfield.
Well, that's true, but I mean, it's just he had either. I still can't quite decide whether he just had a massive redemption for the second half of that season when actually we suddenly just went on a relentless march to European glory, and suddenly kind of quite flimsy players like Biscan became invaluable to us, certainly in Europe, or whether we were just so short of options and actually we didn't deserve to win the Champions League. But he had a really strong season that season, that game against Burnley aside. And you say, that's what he'll be remembered for, and you're right. But there is one other moment that he will be remembered for, long after he stopped playing for us. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is this in America by any chance?
This is in America. This
Yep.
is, again, like dipping into our traditional hobby of highlighting amazingly named American teams. The Seattle Sounders. He scored a 30-yard volley off the underside of the crossbar.
It is one of the most amazing goals a centre-back has ever scored.
Yeah. It's like, go away and look it up. It was in February 2013, an absolutely stunning strike. Funnily enough, during a Champions League match, during the CONCACAF Champions League, against Tigres,
The Mexican side.
a Mexican side. In fact, it was the first time an MLS club had ever eliminated a Mexican side in the history of the Champions League.
As a result of Jimmy Traore's worldie.
Yeah, he then scored another volley in the league about 4 months later.
You have to wonder where these were with us, because he only scored once against Steaua Bucharest in a Champions League qualifier.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest, we were probably playing a higher class of opposition. That's why.
Yeah. It doesn't matter who you're playing. If you can hit a volley like that, no one's stopping it.
Yeah, true. I mean, he did score for us. Well, in a red shirt against Burnley, as we've discussed.
It was actually actually in a yellow shirt, but
Oh God, yeah, it was the yellow and black one, wasn't it?
It's funny how you remember these things.
And
also, by the way, if you notice, it was against Burnley away. So, I mean, it doesn't matter what era, we just can't we struggle against Burnley away for some reason.
It's weird, actually, because we remember that game as being a real upset, don't we? Like, losing to Burnley away in the FA Cup. Like, oh my God, like, what an absolute embarrassment. And it's funny to think now that, like, kind of 10, 12 years on, Burnley are quite an established Premier League side.
Yep.
I mean, maybe in, like, 6 years' time we'll be talking about us having 90% possession against Havant and Waterlooville, but they get their first league win of the season against us. Who knows?
So there you go. Jimmy Traore.
I mean, yeah, I'd not even thought to include him, actually, which was probably the best compliment I could pay him.
Yeah.
There's a couple of other little ones that kind of don't deserve to be called despicable, but weren't the greatest. People like Stephen Warnock, Emiliano Insua, for example. But I mean, I think I'm going to play my trump card now. I'm going to, run it down the flagpole and see if you spit on it.
Yeah.
Paul Konchesky.
The elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room. Too often the elephant on the pitch. Such was his general mobility and skill.
The epitome of the managerial reign he was signed under.
Yeah, no, you're right. He was yeah, that's a very apt way of putting it. He was signed under Roy Hodgson. He's one of Roy Hodgson's early signings. I mean, it seems like a bad dream looking back now. You know what I mean? It seems like such a kind of unlikely thing that one of our key summer signings might be Paul Konchesky.
He brought him over from Fulham, who of course had just got to the Europa League final.
Yeah, which was where we got Hodgson from. He cost about £4 million. Funnily enough, he made his European debut against Steaua Bucharest, who we just mentioned, under Jimmy Traore. I mean, the worst it got, I think, was when he was substituted in a home defeat to Wolves, because that was the thing we used to do back in the days, lose to Wolves at home.
Well, hang on, we did last season.
Yeah. And the Liverpool fans actually cheered the fact he was being substituted. Not cheered him as he came off, but cheered that he was being... I mean, that's poor form, but it's just... And then I think he... was it his wife or his mum?
His mum.
It went off on one about how awful Liverpudlians were and Scousers, and just for picking on her son and just generally...
I've got the full quote if you'd like it.
Yeah, if you would. Can you do it? Can you do it in the voice of Mrs. Konchesky?
I can try. I'm going to have to get the bleep machine out, though.
Go on, that'll be fine.
Yeah, alright. Just have to warm myself up. Take a quick drink. To all you Liverpool scouse scum out there, never mind the Cockney take a real look at your team. Stop living off the past. The team are shit. If anyone makes a mistake, it's the Cockney who never should have left Fulham.
Wow. That's
Yes, so that's Mrs. Konchesky there.
That's more vitriolic than I remember it being. Bloody hell.
Yeah.
I mean, it says a lot about him that he didn't even make it for a full season. He was loaned out to Nottingham Forest as soon as Kenny Dalglish took over from Hodgson.
Yeah, it was.
Basically. And then at the end of that season, he was sold. Funnily enough, to Leicester City. And he was still technically registered as a Leicester City player when they won the league in 2016.
Isn't that depressing? Technically, Paul Konchesky has won more Premier League titles than Steven Gerrard.
Yeah.
On the technicality.
Well, for that season, he was on loan at QPR.
He's still registered to their books.
When he got back at the end of the year, they promptly told him they didn't want him, so he went to Gillingham.
Yep.
And again, couldn't even do a full season at Gillingham before he ended up at Billericay Town.
Oh dear. What is a decline?
In the Isthmian League.
What is a decline?
Do you know what's weird though?
Yeah.
He played for England.
Did he?
Yeah, twice.
Well, we did have problems with left backs for a while, so
yeah,
it kind of makes sense.
I mean, he made his debut in the same game that Wayne Rooney did.
Wow.
In 2003. I know what a similar path their careers followed.
Yeah, right.
When to just kind of emphasise the ignoble career he had, we lost to Australia on his England debut. And then he played against Argentina 2 years later.
Good God.
I know.
I mean,
he was actually in the West Ham side. We beat in the FA Cup final as well.
He scored.
Did he?
He scored direct from a cross. Do you not remember that? Yeah, he logged. Well, he sort of accidentally. Well, Pereira got caught underneath the ball, and Konchesky scored direct from a cross to make it 3. Was it 3-1? I think at that point. I think he went 3-1 down. Yeah, he went 3-1 down as a result of him.
That's mad.
Yeah.
Do you know what else is a bit of a coincidence?
Go on.
You know who his idol was growing up?
John Barnes?
Julian Dix.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, all the signs were there, really, weren't they?
It's come full circle, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Paul Konchesky was just absolutely dreadful in every way. He just was never, ever nearly good enough for our club. And as we say, Roy Hodgson, who just had made a complete hash of being our Liverpool manager. Paul Konchesky was the epitome of everything that was wrong with that sort of 6 months of that season. And it's there. Really, do we have any other option?
No, I mean, like you say, it wasn't even just Hodgson. It was the whole 6 months. It was, where we were with the owners, like being sold, almost going into bankruptcy, like just for complete, a year and a bit after nearly winning the league. And we were just in total free fall. All our best players were leaving, and we were signing people like, we'd lost our manager and got in a worse one. We'd lost our players and brought in worse ones. Our owners were driving us into the ground. Like the whole club, we were losing to Northampton Town. Like, just everything was just in decline, and it was just, like the epitome of that. He was the figurehead of just the sorry state we're in for that 6 months.
Sad, right?
Just lack of ambition, lack of quality, lack of class, lack of stability, just everything was sort of summed up in this talisman, this anti-talisman of Paul Konchesky. And he played for England twice.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
And his mum insulted the Scouse, and I mean, you want despicable. That is the definition of it.
I mean, there's no redeeming. But I can't think of a redeeming factor for him at Liverpool.
Not at all. Yeah, I think we're in agreement here, Aaron.
Yeah, it's got to be him.
Paul Konchesky's mum, you are official now. Paul Konchesky, you get very deservedly the number 3 shirt in our Despicable 11.
Yeah. Lucky mate.
So next month, we're going to go with the traditional English way of numbering players, called according to the numbers, which is not playing 4 and 5 as centre-backs, but 5 and 6. So next month will be central midfielders, and particularly defensive-minded central midfielders. Owen.
That's an interesting one. There's going to be some interesting names thrown up for that, I feel.
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite a bit of debate as to what counts as a defensive-minded central midfielder.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
There should be plenty of options anyway. So Owen, get your thinking caps on, and we'll add a number 4 to our team.
We will. But first,
it's me. This is exciting, right? So you may have noticed at the beginning of the podcast we had a Halloween theme to everything. That was partly because when I was writing the script I was listening to a Halloween-based podcast and sort of just got inspired. But that was also because of the following game. Owen, I'd like you to have a little think before I tell you what we're going to be doing. This is a Halloween-themed game, but it's not quite as you expect. It involves footballers and social media.
Okay.
Would you like me to tell you what it's called?
I would, please, yes.
This is Trick or Tweet.
I see what you did.
This is. I'm actually genuinely quite proud of this game. In this game, Owen, I have a list of 12 tweets or Twitter-based activity from footballers up and down the land, and it's simply up to you to tell me whether it's a trick or a tweet. So whether it's a trick and I've made it up, or a tweet and it genuinely happened.
I see. Oh, okay. Right, I'm with you. Are they just Liverpool players, or are they...
No, there wasn't enough content, I'm afraid, so I've just gone with general footballers.
That's funny.
But I think it's a fun game, and once I came up with the title, I felt it was kind of nailed on, this was going to be happening.
Yeah.
So, Owen, are you ready? There's no prizes or anything, this is just for fun, a bit like my funny footballer name game, just a bit of fun. Chance for us to laugh at the ineptitude of footballers.
Yes, bring it on.
So let's start with an easy one. Victor Anichebe, once, of course, of Sunderland and most famously of Everton, the good boy of David Moyes. So now he's at West Ham. We suspect he'll probably be there for 6 months. Who sent a tweet out which read, "Unbelievable support yesterday and great effort by the lads. Hard result to take, but we go again." Unfortunately, this was preceded by the phrase, "Can you tweet something like, colon?"
Oh, I think I remember this happening. I'm going to say tweet.
It's a tweet, yes. In fact, he's not the only one to have done this. We've seen several footballers do similar things where they've basically just copied and pasted what their PR agent has sent them to do. They've just sent it out as a thing. But Victor Anichebe was probably the most famous one of those. So yes, one out of one. Well done, Owen, so far. Okay. Number 2, former Manchester United youngster and West Ham player, also of Lazio, and I think he might have been at QPR for a while as well, can't remember, Ravel Morrison, once tweeted, "If I get 10,000 retweets, I'll give away my signed boots from the Spurs game at the weekend," referring to the game in which he scored twice away at Spurs in a 3-0 victory. He got 702 retweets.
How many did he ask for?
10,000.
Oh, that's awkward. I want to say that's tweet.
It's trick. I made that one up. However, I was inspired.
Oh, really?
Yes, however, I was inspired by the fact that Rita Ora had recently done that, where she said, "I'll get 10,000 retweets and I'll release my new track," and she had about 1,000. So
still no one's heard it?
Maybe not, I guess not. No. So there we go. Number 3, Wayne Rooney. Of course, not the most articulate or intelligent of footballers. You know, no one could doubt his quality. He once got rather angry with someone on Twitter Quite violent, actually. He wrote, "I'll put you asleep within 10 seconds, you little girl. Don't say stuff and not follow it up. I'll be waiting." However, he said that to himself.
What?
The full tweet reads, "At Wayne Rooney, I'll put you asleep within 10 seconds, you little girl. Don't say stuff and not follow it up. I'll be waiting."
See, I say that was a trick, but something about the fact he said it to himself has made me believe it. I'm going to say tweet.
It's a tweet. He really did do that. Yeah, I mean, it's maybe not the most difficult thing to do, but surely if you're a famous footballer, you've got to be a bit more careful than that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where to start with that. The fact he was saying it, the fact he managed to tweet it to himself. It's a weird double. There's 2 layers to that one. What's going on there? Yeah.
The mystery will never be revealed.
No.
West Ham owner David Gold, one half of the inept double act who run West Ham currently, he was delighted to announce the signing of 23-year-old midfielder Pedro Obiang from Sampdoria. Absolutely delighted. So much so, he put up a little picture of Angela Ogbonna.
I can imagine him doing that. But, I'm going to say trick on that one.
He's a tweet, he really did.
I don't even know why I believed it. I don't know why I said trick. I was second guessing myself.
It's because you're doubting yourself, absolutely. You know, I mean, that's a testament to my questions, I guess.
Yeah, that's it.
Another tweet here. This is from the now infamous football philosopher Joey Barton, who has said many things during his time on Twitter. Many of which I won't repeat because he's generally a bit of an idiot. But when his QPR days, he was having a slight debate with some people on Twitter, including a man from Burnley. Of course, Joey Barton would then go on to play for Burnley on 2 separate occasions. However, he didn't like the fact that this was dragged up once. He tweeted in reply to this man, "Imagine having to live in Burnley, worst place I've ever been to."
I think I remember him saying this. That's tweet.
It's a trick. He didn't do that.
Oh, really?
No. So what worries me is the fact you think you'll remember it.
He's done something like that. I'm sure he has.
Yeah? It's a really frightening coincidence if he has, because I thought I just made it up.
It's a very Joey Barton thing to do, isn't it?
That's why I wrote it.
I have a feeling, something very similar to that happening. Maybe it wasn't Burnley, maybe it was Rangers.
Maybe, or something similar.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another one from another philosopher of Twitter, Louis Sahar, who has had quite a famous series of tweets and likes to put on. Yeah, he likes to put on inspirational quotes to drive people through the day, and this one was a personal favourite. "Life is like a temple. When you climb to the top, you're at the top."
It's hard to argue with that. I really want that to be true. I'm gonna say.
I'm gonna break it to you. It's a trick.
What?
I'm sorry. I'm really glad you liked
Louis.
it. Maybe
Louis.
I know. Well, not Louis. He hasn't done anything.
But he should have done. He might not even be on Twitter for all I know.
Well, no. Yeah, he is. He is definitely on Twitter. Another one here, Victor Wanyama, an outpost of Spurs, formerly of Southampton. He kept things simple, talking about his dinner with my writing. "I had spaghetti and it was very nice. I enjoyed it."
Again, I really want that to be true. That's sort of adorable. But I'm doing that thing where I'm second guessing myself again. You know, I'm just going to go with my heart over my head. True.
It's true. It's a tweet.
Yes.
Well done. You're done.
Good lad.
I was worried you're losing focus. I mean, I've not been keeping track of score. I don't know if you have. But
no, I should have done, really, shouldn't I?
So should I. Oh, it's my game. I really should have done.
I think I got about 4.
I don't know. I'll work it out. Well, to be fair, the last time we did this, I said you got about 17, and you got about 14. So.
Yeah, well, I'm owed a couple then.
Yeah, I think that'll be okay. Here's another one. Curtis Woodhouse, who famously went from being a professional footballer, I think for Birmingham, maybe someone else, I'm not sure. Eventually became a boxer.
That's it.
Became a professional boxer, and that's like Rio Ferdinand's now trying to do. I didn't have too bad a career at it. and was very active on social media when he said he wrote this tweet. Amazing to be at Mayweather-Alvarez fight. Floyd's a machine. Of course, about Floyd Mayweather there. Muhammad Ali there too. Didn't stand to applaud though. Beef? Of course, forgetting Muhammad Ali was very heavily into onset Parkinson's at the time.
Oh. That's the sort of thing I can imagine him doing. But
Based on what evidence?
well, boxers are just generally a bit dim, aren't they?
Right.
And that sort of thing happens a lot. Wasn't it Joe Biden, the former VP of the United States, used to like criticise people for not joining in standing ovations when they're in wheelchairs and stuff like that. I'm going to say trick.
You're right, it is a trick.
Yes.
Well seen through the ruse. As you say though, I found loads of those examples on Twitter, so I just sort of copied and pasted one. Here's another one, Ronnie Whelan. He wrote this: massive test for us tomorrow night. How do you think we'll do at Bulmer's Island? Hashtag Bulmer's off the ball. Proceeded with, hi Ronnie, tweet to be put up tonight, semicolon. Did he do it too?
Given the fact that he's a lot older than all the other players on this list, and I think therefore less social media savvy, I'm gonna say yes, he did.
Tweet is correct.
Yes.
He did tweet that. Yeah, very much another one of those errors. I thought that was quite amusing. Right, 3 to go. Sebastian Bassong, of course, famously centre-back for Norwich and Portsmouth and Newcastle. He posted this recently in 2013. Massive 3 points today. We were really solid. Great shift from all of us. Thanks for the support. Hashtag clean shit.
That reminds me of an eBay account I saw once that had accidentally pressed the wrong key on the keyboard and said, as well as my vast range of products, I offer affordable rates on postage and I'm willing to shit all across the United States.
But did Sebastian Bassong say that?
I'm going to say no.
It's true, he did.
Oh.
It's a tweet.
I'm double bluffing myself. Why am I doing this?
This is proving to be a very good game. I think you're...
It is. Who would have thought I was this kind of paranoid that I'd be kind of wrestling with my own decisiveness.
Oh dear. 2 to go. This is Peter Coates, of course Stoke chairman, who sadly couldn't make the game on this day when he said, sad not to be at the game today, full of cold and all blacked up. Supporting from the sofa, hashtag SCFC.
Oh my god, that would be amazing. I mean, not amazing, but like remarkable. Yeah, I'm gonna say he did.
It's a trick.
What?
Your judgment on this man is quite upsetting.
Mainly because I thought that would be such a weird one to come up with if it didn't actually happen.
Well, that's kind of the idea, right?
I suppose. Yeah, fair play.
This is trick or tweet, and that's certainly a trick. Last one. One of the greatest players who ever played the game, Cristiano Ronaldo, was very active on social media. In posting about a competition that he was running, he wrote, "Thank you all for participating in the CR7 boys underwear competition. It's been a real pleasure to see all of your photos."
Wow.
God. Now, if I'm weird enough to get blacked up, could I be weird enough to do that as well?
Yes. Given that this is a man whose mind once came up with the concept of Antonio Nunez's face transplanted onto innocent ball boys, there are no depths to your madness. But
Thanks.
But you're welcome. It was meant as a compliment. But on the basis that I intensely dislike Cristiano Ronaldo, and would quite happily publicly out him as being a bit of a nonce on this podcast, I'm going to say tweet for that one.
It's a tweet. He really did send that
Hey.
out. Yeah, that's not one of his best moments. So I'd say well done, Owen. I mean, I don't know what you scored, but I think that was probably the most stressed you've ever been on this podcast.
Yeah, that was difficult. I'd say it was about half and half. Would you?
Yeah, I'd say about 50%. You could do a lot better. But, I mean, due to the success of that, I'm definitely going to play that again at some point.
Definitely.
That was my Halloween game, Trick or Tweet.
Thank you very much. And I think, as October slips irrevocably into November, we've got time for about just one more game, I would say.
I think we do. Quick round of a game.
Quick round of Liverpool Lime Street, which
love this game.
Which regular listeners will know basically involves us starting with a random topic, and you have to get back to Liverpool Lime Street. It's a bit like Just a Minute meets Mornington Crescent, isn't that right?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it's about being able to create very seamless links without sort of struggling too much like I am now trying to explain the game.
Seamless links, not our speciality, which is why it's so much of a challenge.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, do you wanna go first?
Are you going to give me a thing, or should I give you one?
I'll give you one.
Okay.
Just so I know you've not been pre-planning.
Really nervous now.
Sydney Opera House.
The Sydney Opera House.
Take us from there to Liverpool Lime Street.
The Sydney Opera House, based, of course, in Australia, a country that I have never really visited, but a lot of friends of mine are visiting at the moment because they're sort of mid-20s, going out there, enjoying their lives before the inevitable crushing disappointment of life gets hold of them. It's very sunny out in Australia, although I'm not the biggest fan of the sun. I think mainly because I've got quite pale skin and I'm English and I like the cold of a Christmas, a good Christmas morning. No, I think I've already failed there.
Yeah.
By
Not
the
sure
way,
where you were going with that.
No. By the way, you're meant to call out if you want to catch somebody out.
I know. I was giving you the benefit of the doubt because you only just started, but then you kind of.
My brain fell out my head.
Yeah. Where do you want me to go from? Christmas morning or the sunshine?
Yeah, Christmas morning.
Christmas morning is possibly the most exciting morning of the year, the entire calendar year. You come downstairs with your family. You open some presents. You open the door to see if the presents are there. Father Christmas, who is definitely real, has been and has left you some presents in a pillowcase next to a fireplace. It's a magical morning. And then when you're done with that, you eat Danish pastries and you drink Bucks Fizz around the Christmas table before you actually consider having to do some work towards the lunch. Bucks Fizz, of course, as well as being a delicious sort of fruity drink, was also a band that won the Eurovision Song Contest for Great Britain. There was a very famous bit when they tore each other's skirts off, or like half of each other's skirts. I'm not really sure why they did that, but it became quite an iconic moment in the history of the competition. Other iconic British entrants include Cliff Richard, of course, who I don't think he won, but he came second. Cliff Richard has had a number one hit in every decade from the 1950s to the 2000s. I'm not sure where I'm going with this.
Objection, you're now struggling.
Yeah, I'm going down a Cliff Richard hole.
Well, no one wants to go down that.
No, not anymore.
So where am I going from?
Cliff Richard.
Cliff Richard. Now, Cliff Richard, as well as being famous for having hits throughout the last sort of 50 years, sang at Wimbledon when the rain was coming down and there was no roof on the centre court. Of course, a famous sporting venue, Wimbledon, one of the biggest sort of summer events, much like the Olympics or the World Cup, which of course is coming up next year in Russia. Recently there have been some qualification rounds to see who's going to go. England have made it. Fantastic news for the people of England. Sadly, Scotland won't be there. Scotland, who struggled to qualify with Andy Robertson in their team. Andy Robertson, of course, who's struggling to get into the Liverpool side. In fact, so much so, he's not even been on the bench. He has had to sit out in the stands for much of it. Of course, getting to Anfield can be quite tricky. These footballers probably have cars to drive. Some people might get taxis or might get a bus. Certainly Owen and I did the time we visited Anfield. In order to do that, though, you firstly have to make a trip to Liverpool. And if you're based anywhere outside of Liverpool, the easiest thing to do is to get a train from wherever you are, make the necessary changes to arrive in Liverpool Lime Street Station.
First blood to Mr. Simpson.
Indeed,
Very good.
indeed. And it means I can then get to challenge you. So let's start you off with something fairly vague. Start me off from the colour purple.
The Colour Purple. The Colour Purple was an Alice Walker novel, I believe, but it is also a colour associated with many things. Royalty, for one thing, it's a very regal colour. Quality Street, and the UK political party UKIP. UKIP, of course, without getting too political, are a bunch of xenophobic fascists, much like Paolo Di Canio, the former manager of Sunderland and Swindon Town. They are most well known for being led by a man called Nigel Farage, who appeared several times on Have I Got News For You, alongside Paul Merton, whose real name was actually Paul Martin, but he chose Paul Merton as a stage name because that was where he was from in London. Paul Martin was not related to Aston Martin, who was probably a person once, but is more famous for being a type of car. Most famously.
Objection. The man isn't a type of car.
What?
You've just said that Aston Martin, the man, was known for being a type of car.
Oh, semantics. Fine. I was going nowhere anyway.
I could tell, but I wanted to leave it there for a bit. I'm being nice. All right, where am I going from?
Aston Martin.
Aston Martins, my favourite type of car, actually. I've always dreamed of owning the DB9, probably my favourite car of all time. I've actually driven a DB9 Violante, ooh, fancy, right? Around the Top Gear test track of all places. It's actually Top Gear where I first saw the DB9, as they did a race from Guildford to France. France is actually somewhere I've not visited for a very long time. We used to go quite often on the Channel Tunnel, or as I colloquially call it, the Channel, because I'm so much fun, across to France, and we go to Le Havre, or Le Havre if you're English and a pleb. Liverpool have signed quite a few players from Le Havre over the years. When I say quite a few, I mean two. Both Anthony Letalak and Florent Cinema Pongol, who we may have mentioned earlier in the podcast, has what?
Didn't they sign 3 players from Le Havre?
Who's the other one?
Was it Alou Diarra?
Did Alou Diarra play for us?
He never played for us, but we signed him.
Okay, let's do some research. Alou Diarra. He's still playing.
No, we signed him from Bayern Munich
and then loaned him to Le Havre. Well, hey, I can keep going. So Florent Cinema Pongol, as we mentioned on the podcast earlier, has a double-barreled surname. The first player, according to Owen, to ever play for us with a double-barreled surname. Now, we also mentioned earlier on the podcast how there seems to be more and more players with these. Obviously, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain are 2 of ours. And what I think is a worry is the size of the shirts that they're going to need to wear to fit these names on. The name printers are starting to panic because they're going to have to put quite a lot of long names and all those letters on the T-shirts. That's quite expensive. Takes a little while to produce, but would actually mean they could probably sell them for more with a longer name to the general public. I'm personally not a big fan of getting the name on the back of a shirt. It's something I did when I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. But nowadays, I think a nice clean back of the shirt is a nice representation of the club. Certainly in the case of the current kit, which I think is one of my favourites. You can buy the kit, of course, at many establishments. Most big sports retailers do them. I know Sports Direct do. I know you can buy them online, of course. You can go to the Liverpool Club shop. The Liverpool Club shop, there's 2. There's one at the Anfield itself, and there's one in the middle of Liverpool City Centre.
Objection.
Yes.
There's actually 3.
Where's the third one?
There's one in the L1 shopping centre, and there's one in Williamson Square. So there's actually two in the city centre and one at Anfield.
Ah, see, I only know the one in the square.
I feel bad because that is the most nitpicky thing to pull you up on.
The thing is, like, you could easily finish from here, so I might as well let you go.
Well, exactly. I could. It was my only chance to pull it back. Where am I going from?
From the Liverpool club shop.
Liverpool Club Shop. Yes. They've got a vast range of Liverpool FC related products in the Liverpool Club Shop. They've got scarves, they've got postcards, they've got books, shirts, socks, onesies, sweets.
Objection, they don't have sweets in the LFG Club Shop.
They do.
What?
They have, they have jars of sweets. LFC branded jars of sweets.
Right, I'm going to have to look this up because I'm not sure you're right here. LFC branded sweets.
They definitely do.
Sweets and confectionery at the Liverpool FC online store. Oh, you are right.
There we go.
Oh, I mean, I'm diabetic, so you can forgive me for my ignorance.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll let you off. Another thing they have in the Liverpool store is those mannequins, which is a bit like a statue in a way. A mannequin. It's a sort of form of a person. And statues is nothing, but they have a lot of all across Liverpool. They've got a statue of the Beatles, they've got a statue of Billy Fury, they've got a statue of Cilla Black by the Cavern Club that looks a lot like the GMTV presenter Kate Garraway. And they've also got a statue, they do, and they've also got a statue of the popular Liverpool-born entertainer Sir Ken Dodd. And that statue is placed within the concourse of Liverpool Lime Street Station.
That's a very impressive way of getting to that point. I'm going to have to look at this statue, though. I've not seen this. I've really got to see it now.
Still Black one.
Oh my god, it does.
It does, doesn't it?
It looks like
it
looks like Kate Garraway. That's amazing.
You'd almost think they just thought, oh well, I can't find a decent photo of Cilla Black. I'll just use the. But they were watching like GMTV at the time.
Why is she stood like the Angel of the North or Christ the Redeemer?
I don't know. Like, I didn't know that was a particular Cilla Black kind of pose. Like, Bill Shankly, yeah, but not. I don't know. It is like the Shankly statue, but with Kate Garraway's face on.
So bizarre. Right. Okay. That means it's now you're going to give me something.
This is the decider. You have to get to Liverpool Lime Street Station from the quite delicious Domino's Meteor Pizza.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned the Meteor. Genuinely, my favourite pizza from the Domino's range.
It is their finest pizza.
It is, because it's 5 types of meats and barbecue sauce. I think the best part for me is those meatballs on it as well.
The little meatballs, yes.
Because there's one on each. It aims to be one on each slice. So you always get one on each slice. I mean, sometimes, of course, due to the way that the food goes down on the thing, it might actually not end up with what you might get 2 on 1, and that's amazing. But then you lose one on one of the other ones, and that's a bit sad.
But then sometimes they fall off in the box, and you can kind of put them back on. I don't know if you've started or not yet, because I'm just joining in.
Right. I mean, you can carry on. I mean, it's fine. It's just that it's my go.
Yeah. No, that's you keep going. You keep going. Sorry, I thought we were just talking about the pizza. I didn't realise you actually started the. Yeah, go on. Keep going.
Domino's Meteor can be ordered from Domino's Takeaway. I do love a good takeaway pizza. Domino's not necessarily my favourite though. I prefer either a local place called Bear Pericon, which is over the road from my house and does a very nice folded garlic pizza bread with feta cheese. It's delicious. Or if I'm getting a takeaway pizza using an app on my phone, I'll tend to go for Papa John's because it reminds me of good times at university. Yes. We had Owen is very clear on that as well. He has had many an experience having us both gone to the same university. I have lots of good memories of university as well as Papa John's. I remember the Happy Man, a lovely little pub that was down the road from the university, as well as the Forester's Arms, a place I played various improvised comedy gigs at, which I always enjoyed, as well as the fine partakings of conversation with the landlord Ray. Who is a legend around Egham and the vicinity of areas. He is a great man and a great publican as well. And I do like a good publican. I think they make a pub better to have good conversation. There are certain times where maybe you want to go for a quiet drink with a friend and don't really want to have meet too many other people. That's fine. But sometimes you may wander into a pub by yourself or with a group of mates, and it's nice to feel welcomed and at home. That tends to happen a lot more, I've noticed, in pubs outside of my city of London, where I happen to live, where most of the people who work at those pubs couldn't give two damns about your existence. But that's okay, because they tend to be a lot bigger. They tend to serve a lot more different types of beer. They're sort of aimed at a different market. Maybe the more the worker, city going types who want to go out and have a couple of drinks and then have to shuffle off to another business meeting or whatever. I do prefer the local pub though. There was a local pub where I grew up called I've gone.
Oh, you were doing so well.
Yeah, I told you when I'm not drunk I can do this better. But
Yeah.
the problem is I don't have a local pub I used to go to at home. So it's like,
I was saying
yeah. So
where do you want to go
from local pubs?
Local pubs.
Near you specifically.
I am very lucky in Whitney, in West Oxfordshire, where there are 24 local pubs for me to choose from in my town alone, as well as various ones in the surrounding villages. 24 is a lot of pubs. That is enough for 1 hour if you want to do a day-long pub crawl. You've got enough time to have a pint and let it sink in without being too drunk as you get to the next one. Although you will get quite drunk if you drank 24 pints in a day, I'm sure. But I have a particular favourite local pub. It's called the Eagle Tavern, and it's so old-fashioned that they don't actually have a card machine yet. They do, however, have a jukebox and a good quiz machine. My favourite game to play on the quiz machine is Deal or No Deal, which, if you can put up with the pre-recorded Noel Edmonds sound bites, is actually really good and quite easy to get money out of.
Objection. No one could put up with Noel sound bites.
Yeah, fair point. I'll let you have that.
Okay, where are we at? Quiz machines?
Noel Edmonds.
Noel Edmonds. Noel Edmonds, of course, the host of Deal or No Deal, as well as back in the 90s, Noel's House Party, one of the most revolutionary TV shows of its day, most notably because they would actually switch to a camera feed in somebody's house of them watching the show at the time, which was technically very impressive back then. Certainly wouldn't more so than it would be now, where everyone films themselves anyway and puts it on YouTube. In fact, people make a career filming themselves doing inane nothingness and putting it on YouTube. It seems to be watched by millions of mainly children all over the world. In fact, I've worked on various jobs with people like that, and in fact, genuinely, I'm flying out to Abu Dhabi next week to do exactly that. My job is very unusual in many ways. I've spent the last week and a half playing video games for a living. And yes, I do realise I'm bragging now, but you have to understand that's the nature of the game, is just to keep talking. I've done many interesting jobs. I've worked in studio television environments. I most recently worked as a sort of assistant producer on online stand-up comedy. Stand-up comedy has always been something that I would like to do, but I've been a bit scared of standing on stage on my own. Whereas my colleague Owen is very much a fan, because he's a poet, a very good poet, I would like to add. I prefer being on stage with other people and sort of being a team. As I mentioned, improvised comedy was something I did before, and I enjoyed that. Currently, I'm in a band. The lead guitarist in a band, which I love doing. I like music. I love rock and roll and heavy metal music. I will confess, maybe not to everyone's taste, but I enjoy it. I've been in a band for about a year and a half, and I think it's really fun to be able to share music with other people, play live, write songs, and find a good bond and kinship with similarly like-minded people. That is something you can do with many walks of life, not just music. If you like literature, or if you like movies, or if you like football, of course. The subject of this very podcast, particularly Liverpool, of course. Liverpool is known for being one of the biggest family clubs in the world. Of course, You'll Never Walk Alone, sung by the fans throughout Anfield during game days, and sung by many at home as well. I know Owen and I have partaken in singing of that song. Not at Anfield as many times as we might like, but certainly we have done at home, watching games, and generally feeling part of the community, which is something that is very important to me, especially because I once watched a Liverpool game. I think it was a pre-season friendly in Melbourne, where 90,000 people sung You'll Never Walk Alone, and I'd just been through a hideous breakup, and it really sort of helped me realise that there was more out there, and more positive influence that football can have. And it's quite interesting you talk about the positive influence of football, of course. The Hillsborough disaster being a very sad thing, but it did unite Liverpool and the whole world of football. But the image I always remember from the modern representations of the Hillsborough disaster is the 96 shirts worn by the little boy and little girl of Everton and Liverpool, who, of course, were holding hands to unite the city, two clubs, one city. and an amazing city that it is. Liverpool is absolutely one of my favourite places, and I wish I could travel there more. Of course, living in London, that's quite difficult, but it's not that far, really, in relative terms. About 2.5, 3 hours on the train from Euston to Liverpool Lime Street Station.
I was waiting for you to say something factually wrong, but there was nothing.
I've worked out. I've sussed this game out.
It was so based on personal experience that I couldn't actually query anything. I couldn't. Fair play.
Hey, you usually win these games, so I'm taking that one.
I do.
You are genuinely much better than this. That's the best I've ever done. So.
Yeah. I wish I hadn't kind of given up ground on Noel Edmonds now. I feel that was such a bad thing to lose it on. If I'd known you were going to go for that long, I'd have fought a bit harder to keep it.
I didn't know I was going to go for that long, to be fair.
As I say, I couldn't find a chink in your armour to stop you.
There we go. And anyway, that was Liverpool Live Street Station, and that was the Plastic Scousers podcast.
It was. Thank you very much for listening. That has been October.
It has been October, of course, heading into November. Well, we're already half through November when this podcast will be released, but we're heading into November. The season is going to be pouring at us thick and fast, of course, coming up to the Christmas schedule.
Yes. I think we've got about 20 games between now and the New Year.
Jesus Christ.
Or something insane like that. So.
Of course, yeah, in just two competitions, of course, Premier League and Champions League.
Yes. Not the League Cup, sadly.
No.
But can't have everything.
Anyway, if you'd like to get in touch with us about any of the things we've discussed in the podcast, you can on our Twitter handles. I'm at MTH Simpson.
I'm at OGB Collins.
Or we can follow us at P Scousers for our Plastic Scousers Twitter handle. Find us on YouTube, you can, if you search Simpson and Collins or Plastic Scousers on YouTube. Of course, if you're listening to this, you most likely downloaded this through iTunes. Please subscribe and download from iTunes. That would really help us out. And yeah, just thank you very much if you have been listening. We really appreciate it.
Yes, and we will be back next month.
For some November fun times.
Indeed.
Right, take it easy, everyone.
Thank you very much. See you again.
Oh, I am a Liverpudlian, and I come from the Spion Cup. I love to sing, I love to shout, I get thrown out quite a lot. We support the team that's dressed in red. It's a team that you all know. It's a team that we call Liverpool, and to glory we will go. We've won the league.